Well, good afternoon, everybody. Would you guys come on over? Thanks for being here for this press conference. So from my perspective, President Trump dropping his EOs as they pertain to Alaska was absolutely incredible. Alaska is a resource state. Alaska was purchased from the Russians because we were a resource territory. We became a state because of our resource potential. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline is the biggest example. But we have mining, we have timber, we have fishing. We have just about every type of resource you can think of here in the great state of Alaska. And we were set up and are set up and designed by Constitution to maximize those resources for the benefit of the people. Not, it's a good idea or maybe you should. But there's really a compulsion in everything about Alaska to maximize its resources. And so with the the EOs that were dropped by President Trump, which attempt to repeal a lot of what the previous administration had done to Alaska, to be perfectly honest with you, I think is welcome news to the vast majority of Alaskans, by far. Everything from oil leases to gas, to minerals, to timber, you name it, discussions on permitting processes, how this is a national security issue, you name it. And quite honestly, I think it's the right thing to do. I know there'll be some that'll say, well, Alaska is now going to become a colony, or Alaska is somehow going to destroy itself. Alaska's never really done that. As a matter of fact, if we do the resource development here in Alaska, we actually save other parts of the world that don't have environmental regulations like we do here in Alaska and America. So we know that these EOs in many cases are going to be challenged by the courts, by NGOs, by environmentalists that don't want anything to happen in Alaska. We understand that's going to happen. But I can't thank the president enough for interjecting hope into this great state after 4 years of the beating we've taken under the past administration. My discussions with President Trump, my discussions with his incoming staff, the whole idea here is to provide opportunity, hope, and a clear runway, we hope, for the future for this country. And being a leader in energy, being a leader in AI and supercomputing. I mean, that's what this is about. That's what the American experiment, to a great extent, is about. It's trying to be the best we can possibly be. And this is just the beginning. Again, as I mentioned, will there be court cases? Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be court cases. Will there be attempts to stop these EOs? Yeah, sure, there's going to be attempts to stop the EOs. But you got a force of nature in the White House right now, and you got people gathered around him, and a lot of support, I think, in this country for dealing with energy issues, dealing with inflation, dealing with opportunity. We have individuals and groups all over the world that I think are applauding what is happening right now in the United States because we lead. We lead by example by doing this. And so I think Alaska itself can lead, and that's my hope. So I'm going to continue to work with the Trump administration. I want to thank him. Thank you, President Trump, for what you did yesterday and what you have promised to do and what you'll continue to do. People questioned why I would ever support President Trump. This is an example. He had 4 years to prove to us, to Alaska, to people like myself and many Alaskans, that he cared about a state way on the top of the world, off the radar screen, with only 730,000 people, 3 electoral votes. Most presidents heard about Alaska. A lot of those presidents landed in Anchorage to refuel to go to Asia. President Trump has taken a keen issue in Alaska. And in my discussions with him in his first term, his last 2 years, my first 2 years, it was always about what can we do to help Alaska? How do we help Alaska? And by virtue of these EOs, you can see that is continuing. So I want to thank him, and I want to thank his team for helping us with this. Alaska's lane, if there is such a thing, is resource development. Iowa, some could argue, is agriculture. Other states might have manufacturing, but Alaska is resource development. Alaska doesn't have to just be one thing. It doesn't just have to be a national park, just a beautiful place. We can do resource development here. And like I said, I think it's very important to remember that if we don't do it here, it's going to be done overseas. Because the demand for minerals, the demand for oil, the demand for gas, the demand for timber is always going to be there. And why not us? Why not us? Why not have us demonstrate to the world that we continue to hold ourselves to the highest environmental standards? And so, again, we're talking about, for the most part, things that are going to be done on federal lands. And the president's hope to provide opportunity on federal lands. Everything from getting ANWR back to where it was in terms of leases, NPRA, even for the people in King Cove. And that's one of the things that amazes me about President Trump. Arguably the most powerful person on the planet, billions of people, issues all over the place, and he's never forgotten the people in King Cove. Most people don't even know what King Cove is in the United States of America. A lot of Alaskans don't even know what King Cove is. King Cove is a small community in southwest Alaska, going down the Alaska Peninsula there on the Aleutians. And they've struggled for years to be able to get sick individuals, people that need to go to the doctor or hospitals, safely to a larger community like Anchorage. Many of their people have died in plane crashes. I was down there talking with them. And what did they ask for? They only asked for a road to go through the wildlife refuge so they can get to Cold Bay, which has a 10,000-foot runway. That's all they asked for. They weren't asking for the moon. They were asking for a road. And remember, these are people that have lived there for thousands of years, so their ancestors have. This is their home area. And so, I know there was movement at the end of the Biden administration to look at doing a land swap, but every time I would talk with the president during this campaign, he would say, how is that King Cove Road thing going? Where are we at with that King Cove Road thing? And so I want to commend him for treating Alaska like a sovereign state in this federal system and thinking about Alaska and the people of Alaska. That's why I supported this president. That's why I supported this president. Because of how he views the state and how he views the people. This is a guy that's one of the most powerful people on the planet, multi-billionaire by all accounts, and he wants to know how the people of Alaska are doing. So I think it's phenomenal. And so we're going through these EOs. They just came out yesterday, late Monday evening into Tuesday morning, and this is just the beginning. And we're going to have discussions with our federal friends. I was in D.C. for the inauguration, also had meetings with Senator Sullivan, Senator Murkowski, and Representative Begich and others. And so, from my perspective, this is happy days are here again, to be perfectly honest with you. This is like unwrapping a gigantic sled of Christmas presents for the state of Alaska. Again, I understand there's going to be lawsuits. I understand that everything in here may not go Alaska's way. I get that, because there's going to be a lot of forces and a lot of lawyers that are going to make a lot of money trying to stop some of these things that the president wants. But the president wants to provide opportunity for this country. He wants to provide opportunity for the state of Alaska. And he knows that we are a solution to a lot of this country's problems. And so I'm just excited about what's occurred here. We've been in conversations, as I said, with the president's team for some time. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people are amazed at what's in these EOs. And I'm going to support the president in giving as much opportunity to this great state as possible. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to turn it over to my staff. I'm going to start with Randy Araro of ADA and how the EOs appear to impact the business that's happening in his agency, and then we'll pass it through some of the other folks that are behind me to do the same. Then we'll open it up for questions. But I couldn't be more excited, and I want to thank the president and his people. Great job, fantastic. Randy?
Thank you, Governor. Randy Barraro, Executive Director for ADA. ADA's mission as a state corporation is simple: economic development and jobs. And in trying to execute that mission, we have been stopped illegally by the Biden administration for the last 4 years. The EOs represent a new opportunity for Ada, our main projects, and these are the largest projects in the state. ANWR, we had our leases illegally canceled and stopped. The EOs address that and reinstate those leases. They also offer an opportunity for future lease sales that actually allow for economic development of leases, and that's the main reason, in my opinion, why no one bothered to bid in the last lease sale. Was the terms and conditions were just too onerous. You couldn't develop under those terms. We know the oil's there. Ada's been working with geologists in pinpointing oil, likely oil reserves, and we have an indication of 3 to 4 billion barrels of oil on Ada leases and estimated revenue from the federal government itself of up to $2 billion annually to the state of Alaska from royalties and other taxes if ANWR is allowed to be developed. We have partners in ANWR, Kaktovik, Community Kaktovik, North Slope Borough, Voice of the Arctic. All of us are happy to see the EOs and to have a fair chance to go forward in ANWR. We can do it now with these EOs and look forward to working with the Biden administration or the Trump administration on the EOs. We have the research done that will support the EOs in terms of facts and legal issues. That's all been done, hundreds of pages of work. Lawyers, myself, staff at Ada, all that is ready to complement the EOs and support them going forward. Another project Ada has is the pipeline AGDC. We have a part in that. The EO addresses the energy emergency, helps clear the way for the clear path for that project and stabilize it. And we look forward to working with my counterpart, Frank Richards at AGDC, in advancing that project. The Ambler Road is another project. We are guaranteed that access in federal law, and ANILCA. Biden administration illegally stopped our access, and the Trump EOs reopened that opportunity for that project to go forward. And we look forward to probably the end of March re-engaging with a number of entities that have an interest in that project. Again, we have partners in that project, the tribe of Allakaket, Hughes tribe and community, others. And so we're all happy that we're going to get a chance to move ahead and build some projects that will help Alaskans. Unemployment is insidious in its effects in Alaska, from high suicide rates to crime rates. And these projects will help put us on the right path, and the EOs will help get us there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Governor. My name is Frank Richards. I'm the president of the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation, and our mission is really about commercializing the tremendous resources of natural gas on the North Slope. So when we saw this Unleashing Alaska's Extraordinary Resource Potential executive order, it was almost like it was written for us. And so we greatly appreciate not only Governor Dunleavy's support in driving forward that this Alaska LNG project will be transformational for the state of Alaska, but also in his conversations with President Trump, that this project is truly one that will value and provide great benefit to America. So the Alaska LNG project is the only energy project singled out and prioritized by President Trump, reflecting the project's singular importance for achieving national strategic priorities, including allowing Alaskans to access the benefit of our own North Slope natural resources. And for that, we greatly appreciate President Trump's support. The executive orders cite Alaska LNG's critical national importance and economic and national security benefits. And President Trump has directed the U.S. government to prioritize the development of Alaska's liquefied natural gas potential, including the sale and transportation of Alaska LNG to other regions of the United States and allied nations within the Pacific region. By taking an all-of-a-government approach, this order aligns the full force and weight of the federal government in support of Alaska LNG, prioritizing agency action on future permitting needs or renewals, promoting Alaska LNG to our Pacific allies, turning away from Russian gas, prioritizing Alaska LNG in international trade talks, and utilizing Alaska LNG for military and defense needs. This order facilitates successful commercial negotiations by informing counterparties that the federal government views Alaska LNG as a favorable geostrategic trade asset factoring into international trade and security discussions. Alaska LNG is the only federally authorized LNG export project on the west coast of North America, delivering direct canal-free access through uncontested waters to Asia allies, looking to turn away from Russian gas and lowering emissions by switching to cleaner burning Alaska natural gas. The broader actions reflected in these executive orders for resource development in Alaska are all underpinned by the affordable, reliable, and long-term natural gas provided by Alaska LNG. Alaska LNG is the foundation for Alaska's domestic energy security and the nation's strategic natural resources from Alaska. AGDC looks forward to working closely with the Trump administration and Governor Dunleavy as we developed Alaska LNG to give Alaskans and our Pacific allies access to Alaska's abundant and economic clean-burning natural gas. And now I'll turn it over to Commissioner Boyle.
Well, thank you, Frank, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. It's an exciting day for DNR. I think January 20th really marked the cessation of the Biden administration's war against Alaska, so it's wonderful to be here basking in the light of morning in America as we actually have a federal government that, instead of treating us like a fief, is going to treat us as equal partners and actually work to promote jobs and investment and opportunities in the state versus lobbying one inimical policy after the other in their quixotic quest, I guess, to turn Alaska into a big open-air museum. I mean, it's really been frustrating for me as a resources manager to deal with the federal government that wants to impose their own radical ideology on the state. I can't think of a natural resource in our portfolio that the federal government in one form or another didn't want to forestall, didn't want to create obstacles in order to develop that. In fact, the chaos was to the magnitude that even though there were federal entities like the Department of the Defense or Department of Energy that wanted to create new opportunities, mine critical minerals, create infrastructure that would support national security interests, you had other entities like the Department of the Interior, which again was run by radical ideologues who wanted nothing more than to shut down those opportunities and wanted to prevent Alaska from being able to develop its own lands or even access its own lands to develop some of these minerals, some of these energy resources, and other things that are critical to not only our country's national security, but to our country's energy security, and of course, for the well-being of all Alaskans is we collectively benefit as our resources are monetized. So I want to echo the governor's words about how wonderful it is to have a president who respects Alaska, who looks at us as people worthy of having an economy and having jobs and opportunities, and who's fulfilled his promises from the start. I also want to give a shout out to Governor Dunleavy for his proactive work in working with the Trump administration. It's no surprise that these executive orders came out because the governor has been on the forefront working with the Trump team, identifying all of these issues that we have been plagued with over the past 4 years and really setting the stage for the progress that we've seen with these EOs. So just to go over really a few of the highlights, I think Randy and Frank have done a great job kind of highlighting what that means in terms of ANWR, which of course is an incredible prize for the state. We stand to benefit significantly from the resource potential there. It's also very highly supported by the indigenous people that actually live in the 1002 area of ANWR and who have subsisted and stewarded that land for millennia. So it's a wonderful day for them as well, as they also have the opportunity to see economic development infrastructure development and other things that will continue to bless the lives of the people that live there. For DNR, I think some of the big things that we're looking at, in particular that came out of the EOs, is President Trump's guidance on public land orders. Some of you may know that upon statehood, Alaska was entitled to receive somewhere north of 105 million acres of land. To date, only 100 million acres have been conveyed. And so there's roughly 5 million acres in which the state is been patiently waiting to take title. For those of you that are geography buffs, 5 million acres is approximately the size of Massachusetts. So with Trump's executive orders reinstating some previous public land orders and also ordering the Department of the Interior to review certain administrative actions that the Biden administration took that would continue to prevent Alaska from taking title to its lands, we now have an opportunity to actually break that logjam and for Alaska to receive its entitlement of a new state of Massachusetts, more or less, within our own borders. And the reason that's important is manyfold. One, Alaska wants title, particularly to those lands along the Dalton Highway corridor, where the Dalton Highway runs, of course, and the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System transits, as well as what will hopefully be soon to see the Alaska LNG pipeline. You know, these, of course, are the state's economic lifelines. And for the state to have control over this land and have management authority over these lands is critical. Because as we saw at the tail end of the Biden administration, environmental groups have already signaled that they were going to try to push for administrative remedies within BLM to actually prevent them from reissuing certain authorizations necessary for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System to continue to operate. That would be the economic death knell for the state if those zealots were successful in those efforts. So I think to the extent that we have this opportunity to take title to those lands and ensure that the state is the master of its own destiny and that we don't have these wine and cheese eating environmentalists in Seattle or San Francisco or some other terrible city that wants to impose their agenda on us is a good thing. Not only that, but it will enable the state to access other areas of state land. That plays into what Randy talked about with the Ambler Road, not having the federal government anymore as an impediment for us to be able to access those lands, as well as the state being able to access other areas of state land where we have high resource potential, but have always been stymied by having kind of this federal moat that separates us from our other land holdings. So getting the federal government out of the business of Alaska is fundamentally a phenomenal achievement for the state, and we're certainly looking forward to working with President Trump and hopefully soon to be Secretary Burgum as we work through that. I think the other area involving lands is with our navigable waterways. Basically, over the last 4 years, the federal government completely stopped trying to work with the state in terms of establishing protocols or working with us to try to identify what water bodies are in fact navigable and should be included as part of the state's land entitlement that we are rightfully entitled to because of our Statehood Act. So having, again, a federal administration that's willing to work with the state, that will sit down with us and enable us to identify these rivers and lakes and streams that are navigable, that are in fact state water bodies where the state should have management authority, I think is going to be a significant thing. And of course, you know, we can't forget about the Tongass. The Tongass is the largest national forest in the country. The second largest national forest in the country is the Chugach. We have literally zero timber harvest that comes out of the Chugach, and the federal government has done everything that they could under the Biden administration, and before that under the Obama administration and so on, to stop any kind of timber harvest in the Tongass National Forest. In my mind, this is the grossest mismanagement of a federal asset that I can imagine. And so I think by getting the federal government, again, out of the business of Alaska, getting them to work with the state in enabling us to offer more areas available for timber harvesting, to provide a lifeline for the remaining timber industry that we have in the state, to continue to invest, to continue to provide jobs, to continue to provide opportunities for Alaskans. These are important initiatives. And so DNR, the administration is looking very much looking forward to working with the Department of Agriculture and their incoming secretary to, again, unlock the Tongass and allow Alaska to be the timber powerhouse that we can be. Lastly, I'll also touch on the MPRA. And as many of you know, we were fortunate to see the Willow Project advanced and sanctioned under the Biden administration. However, that came with a whole string of caveats and a whole string of restrictions. And part of the trade-off is that the federal government worked even harder to forestall any future development within the MPRA through a variety of different mechanisms and planning initiatives and so on and so forth. And so for us, while we're happy to see the Willow Project progressing, we also know that same mineral potential that underlies the Willow Project, which is the same mineral potential that underlies the Pika Project on state lands, we know that potential exists across the MPRA. There's going to be multiple willows that are available to develop within the MPRA, where the resources are there, where we could see significant new oil and gas production in that particular region. So again, by Trump unrolling the inimical policies of the Biden Interior Department, rolling back, I think, some of their questionably legal management calls and authorizations that they've made in recent weeks as they kind of slithered out the door, is going to be particularly important for us, again, to unlock Alaska's potential, to increase our country's energy security, and to create new opportunities for infrastructure that will certainly benefit the state, but will also be very important and benefit the local communities that exist there. So, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about being able to unlock Alaska's resources, to be able to manage our lands and resources in a way that will create opportunities so that we can see Anchorage growing and see school enrollment growing and see cranes in the sky and everything else that is indicative of a strong and healthy economy. By ending Biden's war on Alaska, we're going to be that much closer to ushering in, I think, a new era of prosperity and a new era of opportunity for the state. And DNR, of course, will stand ready to assist with that as well, under the capable leadership of our governor. So with that, I will turn things over to Commissioner Vincent Lang.
Good afternoon, Governor. Thank you for having me. The President's recent executive order unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential will undoubtedly raise the quality of life for Alaskans, and it is a monumentous opportunity for our state and our citizens. Alaskans really are proud of our rich and abundant natural resources in our state and off our shores, which support robust fish, shellfish, plants, birds, and wildlife populations. We have a successful history of managing our diverse resources sustainably to provide for their utilization, development, and sustainability in the best interest of the economy and the well-being of the people of our state. That's embedded in our Constitution, those words. To work to manage our resources in the best interest of the economy and the well-being of the state. We can do this. We're Alaskans. We have this responsibility, and we have the knowledge on how to do it. Alaska's approach to management of our natural resources is really highly effective. Our fish and game management programs are lauded around the world. Our management has maintained vast interconnected ecosystems with healthy fish and wildlife populations that really provide sustainable culture, food, recreational, economic benefits. We also have a robust and effective permitting program that's locally based that ensures our valuable fish and wildlife resources and their habitats and uses are conserved during resource development. We have successfully conserved our fish and wildlife resources on Alaska's North Slope as our oil and gas resources were developed, and across Alaska as our state's timber and our mineral resources have been developed. I am convinced, based on our rich history, we can responsibly sustain our natural resources that President Trump has unleashed, including the 1002 area of ANWR, the timber resources of the Tongass, and the Ambler Mining District and the Access Road, as well as every other opportunity he opened up in Alaska. The executive order also directs the Department of Interior to restore ownership of Alaska's navigable waterways to Alaska, which were granted to Alaska under our statehood. Less than 6% of these waterways have been returned to our state. It's high time that transferred the ownership of these waters to Alaska and Alaskans. For many of us, hunting and fishing is a way of life. Under these executive orders, Alaskans will have a meaningful voice in the management of our natural resources. The executive order directs all Department of Interior bureaus to have meaningful consultation with ADF&G before enacting land management plans or regulations impacting hunting and fishing on public lands. It also mandates that hunting and fishing opportunities on federal lands are consistent with those on state lands. This is critical in that Alaskans know best how to sustain Alaskans' traditional practices in managing our natural resources. The direction to restore the previous version of the National Park Service rule is a step in the right direction. I'm also pleased with the direction that President Trump has provided with respect to the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. These acts have been weaponized against Alaska, and reform is badly needed. This executive order is a significant milestone, in my opinion, in advancing the well-being of our communities, protecting our cultural heritages, and utilizing Alaska's extraordinary resources. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game looks forward to working under the guidance of these orders to ensure that Alaskans have continued access to sustainable hunting and fishing opportunities that uphold the values deeply rooted in our heritage, and that the plain language of the Statehood Act and that ANILCA are adhered to as we continue forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to AG Craig.
Good afternoon. I'm Treg Taylor, the Attorney General for Alaska. The President's executive order represents a sea change in federal policy and a big step forward to a brighter future and a more secure future for Alaska and Alaskan families. The actions called for in the order will unleash Alaska's potential, not only in growing Alaska's economy, but helping the nation with energy independence and access to vital mineral resources. Alaska stands ready to work with the President and his administration in implementing the order and reversing the devastating effects of the last 4 years. This will not happen overnight. As Senator Dan Sullivan has famously tracked, the Biden administration took 70 executive actions targeting Alaska. Over the past 4 years, the number of lawsuits Alaska has had to bring just to hold the line on Alaska's sovereignty and the ability to responsibly develop our resources, which we were promised at statehood, went from 35 cases to now well over 80 cases. With this what this executive order means for Alaska is, and I quote from the executive order with a little clarifier added, an immediate end to the assault on Alaska's sovereignty and its ability to responsibly develop these resources. And here's the part I added, by the federal government, for the benefit of the nation. Others will still carry on their assault on Alaska. The order will hopefully put an end to the lawsuits Alaska had to bring over ANWR, Ambler Road, and the NPRA. Instead, we'll be aligned with the federal government. We can stand together in support of responsible resource development, energy independence, and national security. What this does not mean, and I want to really be clear on this point, this does not mean a reduction in the amount of litigation. In most of the litigation we're involved in, it is not just Alaska versus the feds. There are other parties, many times environmental NGOs that make money in the name of protecting the last frontier by stifling all development of Alaska and its resources. You can bet that these NGOs are going to be able to raise millions and millions of dollars off of President Trump's order. These groups will be ready to attack and litigate every single element of the executive order. Alaska must be prepared to engage in and win this fight. As the new administration begins reversing the detrimental actions over the last 4 years, this will bring new challenges. where we are more likely to stand side by side with our federal counterparts, all rowing in the same direction. If this were a military engagement, Alaska just received very capable and powerful reinforcement of fresh troops. But the battle will still rage on. Our statehood defense efforts are more important now than ever, as Alaska has this golden opportunity to switch from its defensive fortifications and go on the offensive and turn the tide of battle and bring prosperity and opportunity to the residents of this great state. The amount of litigation may not change, but by working together, we will actually be able to move the ball forward on responsible development and energy independence. Projects such as ANWR, Ambler, and all of the potential of the MPRA and the Tongass can be unlocked. Governor, back to you.
Thanks. Thank you. Before we hop into questions here, this past election on November 5th, in my opinion, can't be overstated for Alaska, for this country. And the reason I say that is if President Trump's opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, was elected, I dare say that I think we would have seen more of a swing to the left and catering to the NGOs in an effort to get reelected. So, in essence, we may have had 8 years, 12 years, including the Biden administration, of a severe beating laid on Alaska by that type of ideology and view of how Alaska should be treated. And so, again, I know I've said it several times, I want to thank the president for gutting it out, sticking it out, and winning this election. In Alaska, he won by 14 points over his opponent. All of Alaska's federal delegation is Republican. And part of that was, unfortunately for Representative Peltola, in my opinion, was a backlash. What happened with the Biden administration and their social engineering of this state and this country. And now we have Nick Begich is in Congress, and I think he's going to do a fine job. So the long and short of it is, these EOs represent movement in Alaska's favor and a better partnership with the federal government. As was mentioned, there's going to be litigation. There's going to be NGOs that are going to tell you that the world's going to end if we cut a tree down in the Tongass or we dig for rare earths here in Alaska. What they won't tell you is, once again, if we do it here, we don't enrich our enemies overseas. We don't send the jobs overseas. We don't send our national security overseas. And they may want to minimize that, but I don't think we can, to be perfectly honest with you. And so I think this is a tremendous opportunity. We're going to do everything we can to take advantage of it. For those that believe that Alaska will be destroyed, its environment will be destroyed, it becomes a colony again, it's not going to happen. It's never happened, to be perfectly honest with you. We have partners in industries across the spectrum here in Alaska, of mining, oil, fish, you name it. And you got to remember, we became a state because of our resources. And one of the biggest motivators was fish traps in our fishing industry and a lack of federal management. You look at that. You look at federal management in our abandoned wells, oil wells across this state. You just look at a whole host of things where the federal government failed us. So if people think that the federal government's going to do something better, just look at the history. It doesn't work that way. So again, thank you, President Trump. I can't thank you. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for Alaska. So with that, we're going to open up for questions.
With Alaska Public Media.
Hi, Governor. So your administration has been a big proponent of the Pebble Mine, which is kind of conspicuously absent of the EO. It seemed to be the one big project not on there. Do you think it was omitted, and do you foresee a path forward under the Trump administration?
I see a path forward on discussions on Pebble, absolutely. When that takes place, we're going to let the dust settle and really go through these EOs. But I think that conversation is going to happen. I'm certainly going to have it.
All right, next we have Yareth Rosen with the Alaska Beacon.
Yeah, hi. We're hearing a lot of stuff that you've said before, and you and the commissioners have said before, but
it's because we believe in what we're saying. But
yeah,
go ahead.
But you're basically portraying your positions as the true Alaska, and the Biden administration was waging a war against Alaska, and now the true Alaska position. But there's organizations like the Western Arctic Caribou Herd Working Group that opposed Ambler Mine, the Gwich'in Steering Committee that opposed ANWR oil development, tribes that oppose the state management of subsistence on the Kuskokwim, and tribes and fishermen who oppose Pebble. Are those not true Alaskans? Are they wrong?
You're the one that used the term true Alaskans. I don't believe I used the term true Alaskans. That was you.
Okay, but are they
That's important. That's important because what you say colors the context of the whole conversation. So I never said true Alaskans. There are Alaskans across the spectrum in Alaska. Groups such as you mentioned are Alaskans. They have a right to be part of the conversation. But I would say that the majority of Alaskans want this opportunity, want this ability for Alaska to be in the driver's seat as much as possible. Absolutely. Most of our resource plays are in rural Alaska. Go talk to the native folks in Lake Iliamna area about opportunity there, potentially with Pebble. My 3 daughters work in a mine that their grandfather helped start in rural Alaska. Look at the life expectancy rates that we didn't come up with, but was researched, that have increased because of oil production on the slope and mining in Northwest Alaska. Jobs, opportunity, the ability for kids to stay in their home region, the ability for kids and grandkids to stay in Alaska, for us to grow an economy. I think the vast majority of Alaskans favor that approach. You just got to be careful how we phrase things. I think they have an opinion, and I think in cases there are individuals and there are groups that believe that the environment needs to be protected. I think everybody that's standing up here believes the environment needs to be protected. You send this stuff overseas, you have no say in how it's protected. You send this stuff overseas, you have no say in what those regimes and those governments are going to do with the revenue they get from those resources. I think you win by doing it here in Alaska. I think you win by having the conversation here in Alaska. This idea that if you don't do it, the problem's taken care of. We got Alaska, we save Alaska. Cause a lot of destruction overseas when you do that. And I guess if you have a retirement income or some type of income where you don't have to work or you don't have to rely on resource development, then I guess Alaska is going to be a pretty good place for you because there'll be less people here and more place for you to go, explore Alaska. That's not what the state was supposed to be about. And, some people may be surprised that President Trump is doing what he's doing. If they are, I don't know where they've been the last couple of years. And all he's doing is restoring balance to what the relationship should be between the state of Alaska and the federal government. It's supposed to have a federalist system. And yes, these are federal lands, but the ability to develop these lands is embedded in our statehood compact, is embedded in our agreements with the federal government, whether it's the NILCA, you name it. The ability to develop these lands is there. We'll develop them better than anyone for everybody's benefit.
All right, next we have Joe Allgood with Alaska's News Source.
Yes, I have just a couple quick questions. First, I wanted to see if you had a reaction to the beginning of the state legislature, the opening of that, and the new majority there in the caucus. And then I wanted to see if you had any, if you anticipate, if any at all, effect to the PFD given these new EOs.
The PFD? Any impact of the PFD? That's a state issue. These EOs, generally speaking, are on federal lands. There's a different setup with the royalty on federal lands. But I think the more development you have, the more royalty goes into our coffers, which I guess could indirectly impact the PFD. But again, more resource development, more royalty means a better situation for Alaska. With regard to the legislature, I look forward to working with the legislature. Numbers are very tight there. There's not one supermajority or one group that's going to be able to muscle their way through legislation or the budget this year. And so we're going to get things done if we all work together. If we don't work together, it's probably not going to be much done. But my door is open to work together with this legislature. We'll see how it goes, and I'm always optimistic.
We're going to go to the phones now. First, we have Becky Bohr with the Associated Press.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for your time. Another one of the president's executive orders pertains to renaming Denali as Mount McKinley. Is this something you support, and can you speak to your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked that question by many folks. I haven't had a chance to talk to the president personally about the issue of renaming the mountain. I look forward to sitting down with him and having a conversation to just truly understand the motivation. What I've seen publicly is it's my understanding the president believes that the way it was named, when it was named, et cetera, and the fact that McKinley's name was taken off of it, he's got a problem with. But again, I'm gonna seek out the opportunity when I get back to D.C. Hopefully, we're gonna go back again in February to meet with our federal delegation and others, especially as we get through this some of this confirmation process. But be able to have the discussion about the mountain, what the mountain means to Alaskans and Americans, what the mountain means in terms of its name Denali to our Native folks. Just have that conversation with him. So until I have the conversation, I'm going to refrain from saying what it should be or shouldn't be. But right now, the name is Denali. We'll have that conversation with the president, and I'll be able to get back to you guys and let you know how that went.
Next, we have Mark Sabatini with the Juneau Empire.
Thank you. Governor, a University of Alaska study from 5 years ago said that climate change was going to cost Alaska about $340 million to $700 million a year for the next 3 to 5 decades. And of course, since then, that's accelerated with some fairly dramatic incidents, storms, floods, and such that are costing not just a lot of money, but folks a lot of security, their homes, and in some cases, their lives. And so, given that this executive order includes, quote, rescind, revoke, revise, et cetera, all regulations, order, and guidance that prevents the U.S. from fully availing itself, what would you say to somebody who says, well, wait, what safeguards are there that these things causing these costly climate impacts aren't going to continue and get worse and get more costly and be a very negative entry to offset all these financial gains you're citing?
Our carbon footprint is 3 times, let me put it this way, China's carbon footprint is 3 times more than the United States of America. And that's a fact. I put up 50 solar panels this summer on my property, and I'm glad I did because I want the electricity. I'm going to use it for certain things. But I'm also honest enough to admit that there's a good chance that those solar panels were made in China, which they were, and probably were made as a result of coal-fired electricity, which is adding to the carbon issue. And if you believe that the carbon issue is a contributor, which many folks do, to climate change, then really the culprit for climate change is not here in Alaska, certainly, and it's not here in America, but it's in China. By doing resource development here, as opposed to buying our minerals from China, I think that contributes greatly to minimizing the impact on the environment. So again, the demand for minerals, the demand for oil, and the demand for gas is going to keep going up. That's a fact. I've been a big proponent of energy of any type: wind, solar, oil, gas, coal. In my own place, I've got wood, I've got coal, I've got propane, I've got fuel oil, I've got solar. It's not America who's putting on a coal plant or 2 every week. It's not here in the United States. It's overseas, Mark. And so my answer to that question is simply...
Quick follow. If they rescind all the regulations, orders, and so on in that federal order, what makes the U.S. doing it any better than China if the U.S. gets rid of all of its regulations as this executive order specifies?
Well, I really have no idea what you're saying, Mark, and I'll try it again. There are no regulations in China. That's why they're putting on coal plants, 2 or 3 a week. Their carbon footprint is 3 times as much as the United States. This idea that we're going to enter an era of 1800s unbridled resource development and environmental destruction, nobody believes that's going to happen. Nobody believes that's going to happen. You may want to insinuate that that's a possibility. It's not going to happen. Alaska wasn't told by the federal government not to flare its gas. We made that decision. Alaska takes care of its environment regardless of what the federal government says. We take care of our environment here. But I don't see what you're you're portraying is going to be realistic, to be perfectly honest with you.
Next, we have Sean McGuire with the Anchorage Daily News.
Well, thank you very much. This is a question, I guess, for the governor or maybe the DNR commissioner. I was curious if any of these executive orders would help with the Cook Inlet gas shortages that we've heard are looming. And if they're not, what can be done for the more immediate energy issues that Alaska's facing?
I'll ask the second part of the question. I'll answer the second part of the question first. We introduced some initiatives last year to the legislature that we thought would help incentivize more gas production in the inlet. The easy gas is, from most experts would say, is gone. The easy cheap gas. So any gas that we get from this point forward is going to be more expensive, and it's going to be economically challenged for some of the outfits that are in the inlet. We used to have many more developers, explorers in the inlet, but again, since the cheap gas is gone, the easy gas is gone, we have a couple left. We introduced some initiatives last year. Those initiatives failed. We're going to have discussions again with the legislature, but I think offshore, where are you? Offshore leasing? You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, I think in response to that question, there's a few things. One of the earliest indications of where the Biden administration stood on Cook Inlet energy production came in the form of a leaked memo from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Director, who stated that if the federal government were to increase their royalty rates, then they could foresee decreasing industry interest in acquiring offshore leases in Alaska's Cook Inlet and other places. So there was certainly an intent by the Biden administration to have provisions in place in their leasing structures to make leasing from the federal government in the Cook Inlet as unattractive to industry as possible. As the governor referenced, one of the areas that the state has looked at in terms of what we can control is lowering the royalty rates, at least in state waters, to incentivize that development. So that, I think, having the federal government taking that kind of approach, understanding that we actually do have an energy emergency here in the state and we do have the need for additional Cook Inlet energy, as the federal government follows the lead of the state by improving the terms of its leases, then certainly that could be a significant driver of creating more energy potential in the Cook Inlet. And as Commissioner Vincent Lang mentioned, the other important element of all this is around permitting. Of course, most of you guys know, and a lot of us appreciate as we drive down the Seward Highway, you see beluga whales. And, my kids love to see them every time we drive down. Unfortunately, those beluga whales create a lot of headache for anyone that want to do anything in the Cook Inlet. So looking at the provisions of the Endangered Species Act, looking at NEPA reform and how we can have a better process that isn't tied up interminably by one challenge or the next. I mean, it's those kind of regulatory hurdles that keep us locked up from our energy resources. So, I love the belugas and, wish them all the luck in the world, but I'm more concerned about my house being warmed and the lights turning on and Alaskans having a secure energy future than I am about a couple of wells in the inlet. So.
All right, next we have Ashlyn O'Hara with KDLL.
Hi, Governor. This might be a question for Frank Richards, but now that the federal government has kind of made its support for the Alaska LNG project official, do you think the federal government should, be putting any financial resources to that $44 billion price tag?
Well, that's a great question, and let's be fair and let's clarify. The Biden administration did support this pipeline, and we were grateful for that. Our federal delegation was able to get into a bill loan guarantees for this pipeline that were inflation-proof, somewhere in the neighborhood of $28 billion. The loan guarantees really had no money put behind it from the agencies, however. we're hoping that that discussion, we brought that to the attention of folks at the federal government to further that discussion. But we believe that we have a pipeline situation now that's coming together with our permits, with the need for 3 times the amount of energy we currently use in this country, in this world, because of supercomputing and data farms. And so we're in meetings almost every day now with potential partners, with those that are signing agreements to further discussions on this pipeline. We'll continue the discussion with our federal delegation on the loan guarantees, but both the Biden administration and the Trump administration obviously support this pipeline. It was under the Trump administration in 2020 where a lot of the work was done on the permitting process. And so we have all of our permits since 2020. So we were very fortunate that we've enjoyed pretty good support for this pipeline. And we're anticipating that support will continue and actually grow.
Our next question is from Steve Strait with KRUP.
Good afternoon, Governor. Steve Strait, Radio, Dillingham Radio, Bethel. Many were surprised by the specificity of the EOs that were issued by Donald Trump. Clearly, there was a lot of preparation that had to go into that. Could you just give us a background on how much and when you started the process and discussions and how that kind of went along? And then a follow-up question, Governor. There are 70,000 employees with the Department of Interior. The president has spoken for many years about moving that department out of the swamp. Any conversations about moving them to Alaska? Thank you.
Good questions. So they actually moved part of the Department of Interior, I think, to Grand Junction, Colorado, under the Trump administration. I think a lot of that was undone by the Biden administration. And the reason they moved it out there, the stated reason was to bring the parts of DOI, BLM, and other agencies closer to where the action is, which is out west. I haven't yet had discussions with the president on any additional relocations to Alaska at this point. And with regard to preparation for the EOs, these EOs, Steve, I wouldn't say they're common sense, but these are things that have been discussed under the Trump administration, actually implemented, ANWR, for example, under the Trump administration. So in many respects, it's not very difficult for the Trump administration to reconstitute these EOs, and we certainly had input. We sent them a transition document. And so we were just very pleased to see a recognition and acceptance of the work that the president, his administration did, the first administration, and the need for Alaska to be manifested in these EOs. And so, again, we see this as a first step. We know there's going to be lawsuits, but our goal is to continue the conversation with the president's people and our federal delegation, because we believe a lot of this stuff actually needs to be put into law by Congress so that it's not undone and we get this whipsaw effect here in this country because of changing policies in different administrations.
Next, we have Eric Stone with Alaska Public Media.
Hello, this is Eric Stone with Alaska Public Media. I wanted to touch on another topic. You introduced an elections bill today. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what that bill does, why that's necessary, and why it doesn't include something like a notice and cure provision that would allow voters to fix errors like missing signatures, identifiers, things like that.
Yeah, we've actually introduced, there's probably been 20 election bills introduced over the past couple years by both the administration and the legislature. I think everybody agrees that there are some things we can do to improve our elections. This bill is a start in that conversation again. And if there are things that people believe need to be added to strengthen the bill, we're certainly open to those discussions. But basically, this is a continuation of trying to make sure that our elections going forward, the integrity of our elections is pretty tight. And so we're going to take another run at it. In discussions with some legislators, they too see a need to strengthen this election process. And so we introduced the bill. It's a starting point. We're going to get down there in Juneau. I got people there now. We'll be heading down here very quickly, probably Friday, and continue this discussion. But I think you're going to see some election reform that's going to benefit all of Alaska.
Next, we have Jeff Landfield with the Alaska Landmine.
Hi. I have more of a philosophical question. Commissioner Boyle mentioned in his remarks we should be the master of our own destiny, and it seems to me every 4 or 8 years, we're either begging the federal government for help or we're screaming at them for not helping. You know, we have a ton of resources, a ton of state land. We have our permanent fund. Why are we always asking the federal government for money and for help? Why don't we do more to, as Commissioner Boyle said, be the master of our own destiny and take care of ourselves?
Yeah, I'll answer that, Jeff, because I think that's a fantastic question. I agree 100%. We should do everything we can to maximize our opportunities on state land. You're going to see some land bills that I've introduced. You're going to see some energy bills, bills on agriculture, executive orders on agriculture. I couldn't agree more. And probably going to see this in our state of the state, the essence of what you just asked. How do we control our own destiny? How do we become more competitive? How do we take advantage of what we have? I agree 100%. We're here today talking about the EOs because there's 60+% of Alaska within its borders is controlled by the federal government. We have opportunities on federal land. These EOs demonstrate that the Trump administration and I think Congress as well is going to support more opportunity on those lands. But your question is really the question for all of us. What do we want the state to look at? Article 8, Section 1, quote, "It's the policy of the state of a state to encourage the settlement of its lands," and you're going to see land bills, "and development of its resources by making them available for maximum use consistent with the public interest." 100%, Jeff, and love to have more conversations, John, about this, but on our almost 100 million acres of land, we have 43 million acres of trees. We've got all kinds of mineral potential. You'll see me advocating for more roads in Alaska. You'll see some others that are advocating that we shouldn't have any roads. You'll see us advocate for land getting in the hands of Alaskans. Alaska has the lowest percentage of land in private hands by far than any other state in the country. Second last is Nevada, and they have 3 times percentage-wise more land in private hands. I think it's Rhode Island that has 98% of all of its lands in private hands. We have all of these resources. We just have to come up with policy that maximizes, as the Constitution says, the use of these resources to benefit the public. And you're going to see that happen again in bills that we present. But Jeff, I'm sincere when I ask you this. Please have the same conversation. This is not a deflection. It's a great question. Please have the same conversation with legislators in Juneau on both sides of the aisle. What policies are you going to put forward that will give us opportunities in mining to produce new revenue and jobs? Oil and gas. Will you support the Gasline? Will you support oil exploration and development? Timber, across the board, you name it. So I couldn't agree more. And I look forward to having a conversation with you and others on how we take advantage of what we do here in the state of Alaska.
So, if I could say one more thing, I don't know if I can, no problem, but if I could say one more thing, I'd like to.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to follow up with, we have 700,000 people in a country of 330 million, and I've been asking all these questions for many years, the ones you mentioned, to the legislature. But it just seems like we're a small state, and we have this NIMBY problem where every time something, whether it's a road or a bridge or a project or a housing development or a trail or a connection, just a few people, and it's not really partisan. It could be conservatives, it could be liberals, it could be environmental groups, it could be lodge owners. They always seem to find a way to stop things. And this goes back a long way before you. How do we fix that?
It's become, I agree with you, Jeff. Unfortunately, it's actually become part of the culture of Alaska. Alaska, it's ironic. Alaska was a risk in and of itself. Seward was belittled for his attempt to bring in icebergia, as they called it, in Wall Russia. We all know that if we read our history. But it was a big risk. $7.2 million doesn't seem like a lot of money today, for sure. But read the history on the Trans-Alaskan Oil Pipeline. One vote, court cases, one vote, I got that whole thing going. Court cases almost dragged it down. NGOs almost dragged it down. It was stalled many times, barely made it across the finish line, and look how it's transformed Alaska. We had a little issue, for example, on using an existing highway from Tetlin, Alaska, to move ore up to Fort Knox. That was opposed. We have a road initiative going out to the West Sioux to open that up for mining and timber, et cetera, that could provide opportunity for Alaska. Some are opposing that. I agree with you 100%. We're going to keep fighting through it, but it would be great if we get as many champions in the state legislature to fight for these developments. You know, one of the saddest things for me is a lot of this resource development is in rural parts of the state where our Native folks live. Northwest Arctic, where I spent many years and my wife is from. Red Dog Mine was started because of the foresight and just the perseverance by Native folks up there. Pebble Mine, that so many people think is going to, destroy the fisheries in Bristol Bay, without really having a discussion as, can we really do it in a manner that science will show that it can't happen? That would benefit a number of folks out in rural Alaska who right now feel like they're going to have to move to other parts of the state, leave the place where their ancestors lived and move to other parts of the state because there's no economic opportunity. We haven't run out of ore. We haven't run out of timber. We haven't run out of oil or gas. The question is, and I'll be talking with the legislature about that, are we going to have the will to maximize the development of our resources for the benefit of our own people, especially in some of the poorest parts of the state? This is what we've done since I've gotten in the office, and this is what we're going to consistently do. But I think that is the question for all of us. And I look forward to working with anybody and everybody that wants to provide opportunity. And I've said this to people, Jeff. I've said, don't come in my office if you're going to tell me we can't do something. Come in my office, and if you want to talk about how we can do something, or how we could do it better, or how we could safeguard things, I'm all ears. I'll spend time, I'll clear my schedule. I look out the window and I always tell my staff, how many cranes do you see? Not very many. And I recently got back from a trip overseas and a trip from Washington, people asking how Alaska's doing. They really don't have these conversations about, let's all stop this resource play or that road or taking down this tree. There's other parts of this world, in this country, that are absolutely booming. And Alaskans see that when they leave the state, but I don't think they think about it. I think they just think that's the natural progression down south, and this is the natural progression in the state of Alaska. It shouldn't have to be this way. My goal is to get things going, Jeff, so that our kids don't have to leave the state of Alaska. Our kids don't have to leave the state of Alaska. It's a big state. We got a lot of room. We got a lot of resources. And this idea that if we do any resource development, if we so much as think about turning over a spade of dirt because we may have the largest graphite mine in North America, largest nickel find in North America, 49 of the 50 critical minerals. This idea that if we try and access those, we're going to somehow destroy Alaska makes zero sense. I hope that members of the legislature see through those scare tactics. And I hope members of the legislature really want to develop resources, again, in the rural parts of the state of Alaska, where some of our most economically disadvantaged fellow Alaskans live. They want opportunity. They want the ability for their kids to stay close to home. So congratulations, Jeff. You really touched upon a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I hope it's near and dear to everybody else's heart, too.
Next, we have Jack Barnwell with the Fairbanks Daily News Miner.
Hi, Governor. Quick question on the IRA and bipartisan infrastructure funding. You've frozen any concerns that could impact related Alaska projects?
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
Can you ask again, Jack?
Yeah. Are there any concerns about the president freezing Inflation Reduction Act funding or bipartisan infrastructure funding? Any concerns that could impact related Alaska projects?
Oh, I think the president is going to definitely attempt to change aspects of that bill. He has stated that. I definitely think mandates are going to go by the wayside. To what degree will the incentives in that bill and the bills that were passed under the Biden administration, to what degree those incentives will be changed? I don't have the answer to that. But certainly there's going to be changes. And again, we're going to have to wait and see and have conversations with the administration and our federal delegation. But the degree of those changes, I'm not sure at this point. Again, just got into office here on Monday, dropped the executive orders on Tuesday. We're having a press conference here on Wednesday, so we'll have to see and monitor that.
Next, we have Iris Samuels with the Anchorage Daily News.
Thank you, Governor. I'm wondering what you think about President Trump's executive orders related to the federal workforce and how those would impact Alaska, and if you would consider any sort of similar initiatives with the state workforce. And specifically, if you could address the order to prohibit working from home for most federal workers, and the order eliminating all diversity initiatives in the federal government workforce. Thank you.
So if I understand the question, you want my opinion on what the president is doing. I don't know to what degree folks who are working at home in the federal government. My understanding from what I heard, and I can't verify this, was there was a considerable number of folks working at home. I'm not sure if the working at home negatively impacted the productivity of certain programs, division departments. It may have. But certainly the president views the concept of working at home as a disadvantage to serving the people of America. So he's made those changes. Here in Alaska, we had working at home, I think, to a much larger degree than we do now through the pandemic. But I don't know, Iris. Well, again, this is all we're just digesting all of this information and trying to see where things are going to go. But I'm not sure how it's going to impact. I think there will be people that, if they're required to come back to the office, will probably leave employment of the federal government. But I also think there's going to be a lot of people standing in the wings that will probably fill those jobs.
Our last question was sent in from Nat Hertz. It's for you, Governor. He asked, how do you think the Trump executive order blocking all federal wind project permitting will affect Alaska, and do you support it?
Is it blocking all wind permitting? I just want to make sure, or is it offshore wind? And I thought it was offshore wind. And right now we don't really have offshore wind in Alaska. So as of today, it's not going to have an impact as of today. But again, well, we're all digesting what's just occurred. I'll have to see if that impacts all wind projects. That would be tough on places like Texas and Iowa, which produce a tremendous amount of wind if it's all wind projects. But I do know that there was discussion to prohibit offshore wind. Right now, we don't have offshore wind. And again, these will be issues that we'll have to take a look at and to be able to appropriately respond to here at a later date. So I want to thank you for being here today. It absolutely befuddles me at times why some people believe opportunity is something that's a bad thing. Why the ability to produce more economic activity on federal lands, and as Jeff said, I don't know, Jeff, I think I've thanked you more today than since I've known you, but as Jeff said, on state land. We have the ability to create wealth. The game over the past several decades has changed to where it seems like we're willing to do everything we possibly can to stop opportunity. And when we need money, we look to the federal government to print money, or we look at taking money out of our neighbor's pocket through a tax. The state of Alaska can produce trillions of dollars worth of wealth if it was unleashed and we had the ability to do this, to develop our lands. I wholeheartedly, categorically just disagree with this idea that if we develop in Alaska, we destroy Alaska. I believe if we don't develop in Alaska, we help destroy other parts of the world. You can see that. You can see that when thousands and thousands of acres in the Amazon or in Borneo are mowed down for palm oil plantations or timber. You see that happening. You see it in other parts of the world, whether it's in Africa or Asia. We have children engaged in very dangerous practices in mining, et cetera. We don't seem to care about that here in America if you're an NGO. We don't talk about that in America if you're an NGO. We don't care about those kids. We don't care about those minorities. We don't care if we're enriching foreign regimes. We don't care if we're giving money to outfits like Iran and they're transferring money to places in the southern Arabian Peninsula, in Yemen, to sling rockets at the Red Sea or Israel. We don't seem to care about that. All we care about is making sure we do everything we possibly can to stop development in the great state of Alaska. And I can see it, right? It's a moneymaker. You're sitting in your chair in Florida or New York, and up pops an ad on YouTube or TikTok. Who knows what's going to happen with TikTok, but Save Alaska, click here. It's going to get a lot more clicks than Save Rhode Island or Save Delaware. I get it, because it's a beautiful place. But until we reconcile the issues of offshoring wealth, opportunity, and national security, we're going to have a problem in this country. President Trump recognizes that. President Biden, in my opinion, because in order to get elected, he had to incorporate elements and radical parts of that side of the political spectrum to social engineer this country. You're going to drive an EV. You're not going to use a gas stove. Quite honestly, that's un-American, to be perfectly frank. Well, some of the reporters that were online here today might say, by not controlling those things, you're going to destroy the environment. You're going to have more carbon in the air. The Chinese are producing 3 times as much carbon as the United States of America. Our carbon footprint has actually gone down through a whole host of issues, efficiencies, et cetera. I feel a bit guilty in buying my solar panels that I have up because I believe that they may have been made in China, and they may have been made through the use of electricity from coal-fired plants, and God forbid they were made by children. It's a possibility. I recognize that. But here in America, if you do it here, you don't have to worry about those things. If you do it here in Alaska, by God, we could possibly enrich some of the people in Tetlin with the gold mine they have there, or some of the people out by Lake Iliamna, or in Northwest Arctic, which did benefit from mining, or the Ambler Mining District, ANWR, NPRA. We can develop our resources here in the state of Alaska, whether they're on federal land or state land. And we can develop them better than anywhere else in the world, I believe. And I believe we have the best environmental protections. So it doesn't have to be an either or. And I understand that there are folks that made their money, some of them are probably retired now, and they want to be able to go out to Alaska and not see a cat, not see a D9, not see a road. I get that. But in my opinion, that's extremely selfish. In my opinion, that is not forward-looking. It does not take into consideration our kids and our grandkids and the future of this state and this country. And all we're going to do is just, if that mentality wins out, we're doomed as a country. We're not going to be able to hand off a country that was better than what we got from our parents, or that we improved upon after getting it from our parents. It's not going to happen. So in Alaska, I'll continue to fight tooth and nail to do as much activity on federal land and as much activity on state land. There is no reason why Alaska shouldn't be one of the richest states in the country. There is no reason why Alaska shouldn't have over 1 million people here in a landmass the size of a subcontinent. There's no reason why we shouldn't have as much opportunity here as possible. It's not because we've run out of the resource, we haven't run out of the gas in the world, as I said. It's because we're running out of the will to do what those like Seward and others did before us when they came to Alaska. Our motto is North of the Future. Our motto is not don't do it or stop it or no resource development. It's North of the Future. So, this is the last time I'll say your name, Jeff. I think Jeff Landfield kind of laid down the challenge. for the executive, but also the legislature. What is this great state going to look like? President Trump is moving full steam ahead. Thank God. Glad I voted for him. Glad I supported him. Best president, in my opinion, in Alaska's history. I know some people listening to this are probably going to lean over to their waste paper basket. But we can be an unbelievable economic dynamo here in the state of Alaska and still be able to go out in large parts of Alaska and not see another person and not see a road, not see a crane, and not see a D9. We could have it both here in the state of Alaska. So with that, I look forward to working with the legislature. President Trump, I should salute you. Thank God you're in office. Anyway, look forward to talking with you guys in the press here as things move along. But I'm anticipating and I'm hopeful as always, and I'm looking forward to working with the legislature this year. So thanks for being here.